The object of the exercise with N4C was to think about how we could extend the internet into areas where there is no infrastructure. And so from that point of view, it does increase innovation. It leads us to think back about the way that time affects networking, which is rather been lost sight of. We rather assume that time is no longer an issue in networking. It is. So I think that getting people to think about the way that time affects things and delays and disruption is important, because we blame the user at the moment. I think the problem, to an extent, from the point of view of actually trying to obtain funding, and that tends to be the necessity to actually do work, is that you get a set of abstractions which are the EU policy. You have to build proposals which are built on these abstractions, and then go back and actually try to convince people that you're doing something useful in this, and justify it. And then when you do it, you've got to justify what you've done in terms of those same conditions. I'm not sure that this is always optimal. In fact, I'm sure in some cases it's very suboptimal. And certainly the proposal process and the formation of consortia can be extremely counterproductive. So I think that's from the economic point of view. From the social point of view, I think the main problem there is really the lack of understanding between the users and the technology developers. I'm not convinced that social science actually helps to solve that problem. It's a matter of informed technologists understanding and being able to understand what the users really want from the system. The stakeholders, we did actually, in this particular project, have, we had two areas where we were building test beds. In one of them, this is the northern Sweden area, where reindeer herding is the main economic basis. And we had out of that area a small company which was run by a couple of reindeer herders, a couple of lady reindeer herders in fact. So there were gender aspects to it as well. And they were very important, A, because they knew what the situation was. They could help us with the logistics, which were very complicated. Trying to run things in very challenged areas is difficult. And they understood what trying to achieve. The difficulties from that point of view, and perhaps this goes back to item 2, is that such people don't understand how to write technical reports for the EU. And this led to some friction. But they were very important. So they were one of the stakeholders. Obviously there are other stakeholders. Mostly it was relatively small companies on this. In the other area, the main local stakeholder was actually a small consultancy company who were doing environmental monitoring in the Kocheve area of Slovenia. And they were a very important stakeholder, but they were sitting in the middle in a sense, because they were technologists already, although they knew the local country and they knew what was required. So they were rather, they were in that sense an easy stakeholder to deal with, as opposed to the ones in the Swedish area who did not understand all the difficulties and all the niceties of dealing with the EU, or indeed being what is effectively an academic project. From the rest of it, we didn't have any, apart from a small amount of involvement from Intel, we didn't have any very big companies in it, so that we had mainly small companies and academics. So, but ultimately the stakeholders should be the users in these areas. Both the digital agenda, from what I see, does appear to involve quite a lot of the EU beating up on individual national regulatory authorities, for example, and to be able to do things of that nature. So I think, in a sense, the digital agenda is nice. It's very high-level words again, and it's very high-level suggestions, and it's not altogether clear to me that the EU has either the clout or the incentive to actually deliver on some of these things. And so you could argue that the digital agenda is not relevant.
Okay.
There's a lot of thinking still to go on, and there's more research. We're still really in the research stage. The digital agenda is straightforward mainstream. It's supporting today's business. It's not subversive. It's not modernising. If you're going to foster the sort of work really to get a future internet, which is really different and actually deals with some of the issues that's come up in N4C, then they're going to have to go down a whole different path from the one the digital agenda